Growing up, Avatar The Last Airbender was a show that I thought was really good, which isn't really a hot take since it's easily one of the most influential anime shows in the 2000s. Not only was the animation stunning to look at, but the show's darker themes of war and death made it a classic that is still held in high regard today, and has acted as inspiration for many other shows like Adventure Time, Steven Universe, and The Owl House. So when Netflix announced they were working on a live-action adaptation of Avatar, I was somewhat conflicted. On one hand, the live-action movie released in 2010 was terrible, as not only was the effects and acting horrendous, but they didn't even get the characters' names right.
Ong flew us to his...
The monks named me Ong.
Ong, wait!
But unlike the movie, the original show creators were set to work on the Netflix series, and it would sort of be cool to see some good bending effects in live action, so I was open to the idea. However, in the middle of production, the show's creators left, and there were reports on character changes that made fans dread seeing how the series would end up. So with the first season now available, I decided to check the show out myself, to see how it compares to the original version, and what changes they made in order to differentiate itself. I also decided to analyze the pros and cons of the series as well, see if it would be something I would recommend to a new fan of the Avatar series, or to someone who watched the original and would love to revisit the franchise. Before I begin, I think it's important for me to state that I'm mostly going to look at how the show stands on its own, instead of comparing it directly to the original. Since the people who worked on this series wanted to have a more mature tone, so I think it's important to look at this series as its own thing. Anyway, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the pros. One thing I really like about this series is the fight scenes and the effects on the different types of elemental bending. Initially, I was afraid that it would be hard to bring bending into live action, due to the movie failing to do so years ago. However, the bending fight scenes are actually really smooth and well paced. I have to applaud the special effects and stunt team working on the show for putting so much detail into that aspect. Speaking of detail, I also really like the details that I put into the set pieces and background, as it does a really good job of capturing the feeling of the animated series. I also thought the casting was pretty good, and they did a great job of bringing the characters to life. I especially like Aang's character, as the actor does a good job of capturing Aang's childlike nature and personality, while also showing growth and maturity throughout the season. Zuko is another character I thought was done really well, as not only does the actor sound like Zuko from the anime series, but motives and reactions are also very similar to the original series as well. Finally, I wanted to mention how I like the portrayal of Lord Ozai in Fire Nation, as while the original version did state how dangerous they were, it was censored due to it being on Nickelodeon. In this series, however, you actually get to see the atrocities Fire Nation commits, include the genocide of air nomads, and burn people alive. That feature just makes Fire Nation look more of a bigger threat to Aang and his friends. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised at how much love and passion was put into this series, as the action scenes and casting was done really well. I also appreciate how it shows some more mature content as well. However, I am a bit disappointed in saying that the series also has a few big negatives as well. One of the worst aspects of the series is its writing, as instead of showing us the world and how the characters are like, it instead tries to explain them by having minute-long monologues. This breaks the show don't tell rule in writing. It disrespects the audience by talking down to them, and expecting them not to figure things out for themselves. Which is sort of ironic, considering that the show was intended to be for a more mature audience, but the original series that was on Nickelodeon is more mature in its dialogue and character development. Another thing that disappoints me is that they got rid of a lot of the side quests and world building from the original series, and while I understand that some of the changes had to be made due to this version having a different vibe, I sort of think it's a negative in the long run. I think the side quests help us see the bond built between Aang, Katara, and Sokka, and with the series not having them, you never do feel that connection between the three characters. It just feels like an obligation for them to travel together. Speaking of which, you also never feel any emotional connection to the main characters, as most of the time they hardly ever bond and just talk about where to go or what to do, which is a real disappointment. While I understand that the show is supposed to have a more serious atmosphere, I still wish that there were moments where we could have seen the main characters have some fun, so that the audience could connect to them better. Now, to be fair, I do think this adaptation is way better than the movie, since not only are the effects better, but you can tell that there's more passion in this project, as it actually pays attention to the details of the original series, unlike the movie. However, that being said, I think the writing leaves a lot to be desired, as not only does the show drag on with minute-long monologues, but you never feel the chemistry of the cast mesh well. There were some positives that did work, like the darker and more mature tone of the Fire Nation, and the show in general having somewhat of a different vibe than the original series, as well as the bending and fighting scenes being really cool. However, that being said, I think the negatives slightly outweigh the positives, making the overall show a mixed bag in my opinion. If you have watched the original Last Airbender series, then I think it's understandable to be somewhat disappointed in the Netflix series, even though there were some elements of the show I thought that worked. While we're in the discussion of live action adaptations, this has been a growing trend in the last few years, with some of them being successful, like Netflix's One Piece, while most others have been heavily criticized, like Cowboy Bebop. This has caused discussions as to whether live action adaptations of anime shows should be made or not, as while it does make the studios money in the short term, it sort of tarnishes the original work, but that's a topic for another video. And even though this series was somewhat mediocre, I still don't think it's the worst thing in the world, as the fight scenes are really entertaining, and if you can look past mediocre writing, it is a worthwhile watch. I'm curious to see if the show improves, if and when more episodes are produced, but as of now, I would give the show a solid 6 out of 10, with room for improvement in the future. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about the show for now. If you're an Avatar fan and watch the Netflix series, let me know what you thought about the show. I'm also curious what you all think about recent anime shows getting live action reboots, and I would appreciate hearing your thoughts about the recent trend as well. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say for this video, so until next time, Koopa out.